In Chapter 4 of Fear of Freedom, Erich Fromm explores two central types of freedom that characterize modern man: freedom from and freedom to. He highlights how modern individuals have experienced increased external freedom, but have often failed to develop the inner freedom needed to live authentically and meaningfully. Fromm begins by discussing freedom from, which he refers to as negative freedom. This type of freedom represents the liberation from external authorities and traditional constraints, such as religious or social institutions that once imposed strict limits on individuals' lives. In the Middle Ages, for example, people's identities and roles were largely defined by the rigid social structures of the time, such as the feudal system and the church. While individuals were not free in the modern sense, they were deeply embedded in a stable, predictable social order that gave them a sense of belonging and security. However, as these structures weakened during the transition to modernity, with the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the Enlightenment, people gained more personal freedom, but they also faced new challenges. Fromm argues that this newfound freedom from traditional constraints has come at a psychological cost. The loss of clear social roles and collective identities has created a sense of isolation and powerlessness in the modern individual. Without a fixed position in the world, individuals now face the daunting task of shaping their own lives and identities in a vast, often indifferent world. This freedom from external constraints has given individuals the opportunity to develop autonomy, but at the same time it has created deep anxiety. People are now free to make their own choices, but with this freedom comes the burden of responsibility for those choices. The more individuals are freed from the constraints of tradition and authority, the more they are left to confront the existential challenge of what to do with that freedom. In contrast to freedom from, Fromm introduces the concept of freedom to, or positive freedom. This is the freedom to realize one's true potential, to be creative, spontaneous, and authentically oneself. While freedom from is necessary, it's only a starting point. True human fulfillment, Fromm argues, requires the development of freedom to, the ability to act according to one's genuine desires and to express one's unique individuality. Fromm emphasizes that modern society often fails to provide individuals with the conditions necessary for the development of positive freedom. The forces of modern capitalism in particular tend to encourage superficial forms of freedom, like consumer choice, while discouraging deeper forms of self-expression and creativity. Instead of fostering individual autonomy and growth, modern society often promotes conformity, passivity, and a sense of meaninglessness. The result is that many people experience freedom as a source of anxiety and isolation rather than as an opportunity for self-actualization. Fromm argues that modern freedom has not yet been fully realized because many people remain trapped in the paradox of having been freed from external constraints but lacking the internal capacity to use their freedom meaningfully. The failure to cultivate positive freedom leaves individuals vulnerable to manipulation by external forces such as authoritarian regimes, mass media, or consumer culture, which offer simplistic solutions to the existential anxieties created by freedom.